I now call our Jasper County Planning Commission workshop meeting to order. I'd like to say good morning to everyone. We're going to ask Dr. Boss to lead us in our invocation and pledge allegiance.
Let us stand and let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, Lord God, we just thank you for another beautiful day, Lord. We ask you to continue to be with us as we go into these deliberations, Lord, that we can come to agreements that's suitable to the people of Jasper County, but most of all, Lord, pleasing to you. Father, we thank you for all of your many blessings. In your Son, Jesus Christ's name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this morning.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Jenkins, second by Dr. Butler. Ready for question? Hearing none, all in favor of such motion, let it known by saying aye.
Aye.
The next thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 25th, 24 Planning Commission workshop.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jenkins, second by Dr. Butler. Ready for question? Hearing none, all in favor of such motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed by the same sign. The motion carried. Our business for this morning is old business, zoning map amendment, Jasper County zoning orders, Article 5, zoning district regulation, Article 6, youth regulation, Article 7, primary district regulation, Article 50, Article 8, special purpose district, Article 11, conditional use review and regulation, Article 15, sign study, Article 22, rule small lot subdivision standard and zoning map amendment with the U-Haul Broad River planning area. At this time, I'll ask Ms. Wagner, but I think Ms. Denise is gonna go over everything with us this morning.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Commission. It's good to see you
Morning.
this
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
evening.
Everyone is doing well. So this morning, we are coming back to review the ordinance revisions that we discussed at our last meeting. We've made a couple modifications based on your feedback previously that we want to share with you, and also have a couple areas we've received input. As you may know, we had a community open house last Thursday. So we received some additional feedback there, so we want to bring some of that feedback to you as well, and seek your guidance and direction on some of those modifications. So if it pleases the chairman, I can walk through those, but if you want me to give any of a background or more general overview before we launch into the specifics, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, you can give an overview of background.
Okay.
And I ask the commissioners if you will write down your questions so she can go through the presentation and she'll answer at the end of her presentation.
Okay. So if you'll recall, the county council had passed a moratorium in kind of the eastern side of the county, what we call the U-Haul Broad River planning area, due to concerns about growth and outdated regulations to be able to properly manage growth, in particular protect some of the natural resources and the Broad River. There was a working group that was established. Is it hard to hear me?
Okay.
Okay.
It's kind of
Okay.
low.
I can project.
Good.
My apologies. If you recall, the county commission adopted a moratorium in order to give the county time to be able to review and revise where necessary the development regulations to ensure that growth and development was managed in a way that was fitting for the county, and looked at the proper protection of the rural character and also some of your natural resources, including the Broad River. From there, we have had several public workshops and meetings where we talked about the vision of the county based on the previous comprehensive plan in preparation of the updates of the current to the new comprehensive plan. And because of the moratorium, we're going ahead and moving forward on some of those proposed ordinance revisions that we are bringing forth to you today. Probably the three, if I had to summarize it in three areas of what we are proposing in these ordinance revisions. The first is the establishment of an overlay district. And an overlay district is something that sits on top of current zoning that sets forward some additional standards and provisions particular to that area. The second is the creation of two new zoning, so there's actually three new zoning districts. The first is an overlay, and that is a district that sits on top of the base zoning, and that is the U-Haul district. The second is the creation of a new commercial district, and that is the Village Commercial District. And the Village Commercial District is really intended to accommodate small-scale commercial development that will meet the needs of the residents in that vicinity. And the third new zoning district is the RP10 zoning district. And the RP10, Rural Preservation 10, is very similar to your existing Rural Preservation zoning district. The primary difference is that it does increase the minimum lot size from to 10 acres. In conjunction with that RP10 district, one of the new things that we did not discuss last time that we want to share with you this morning and maybe spend a little additional time on is the development of a new article, which is the Rural Lot Subdivision Standard. And that would be, could be applied in the RP10 district and provides a lot of flexibility in the way a development is designed so that you can do smaller lots in exchange for preservation of open space. So that's a new article that we'll spend a little time on this morning. So I will pause there for any questions or clarification before we jump into the ordinance.
Well, the last thing you mentioned about creating smaller lots to create open space.
Yes, sir.
Explain that to me.
Yes, sir. So, and we'll walk through because we didn't have that one when we were here last time.
Okay.
So if you'll recall some of the earlier workshops, one of the concepts that we talked about was what's called conservation subdivision design. And that's where some of the lots might be a little bit smaller and a little bit closer together. However, it's the same overall net density because you are preserving areas of open space. And this is a strategy that can be really helpful in helping to maintain the rural character and also to protect really critical corridors for water quality and for wildlife, which allows someone to be able to develop their property, but do so in a way that, because as we know, the watershed is very large and crosses over many, many property boundaries. So if we have a strategy to be able to encourage property owners to preserve those natural areas, especially side by side, contiguous to one another, then that can help meet the goals of the county while also accommodating development. And we'll walk through in a little more detail what that looks like when we get to that section of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or clarification before we jump in?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Lisa, anything you want to add before we dive in? Okay. So what we are proposing to do is really just to hit the high points of what we have changed since the last time based on your feedback and also get some additional guidance for you on those particular areas. So I will start in the very first article of Article 5. One of the things I will mention is we did modify the name of the overlay district. Before it was rather long, so we have shortened it to simply be the UHA Overlay District for clarity. Moving on into the use table. At our last discussion, we had some discussion about some of the uses that were in the table. So a couple I want to point out. Under Sector 22, Utilities, solar electric power generation was added in Village Commercial as a conditional use, which is consistent with how it is treated. So I'm on the table, Lisa. Which is consistent with how it is treated in all of the districts for the county. Moving on to Sector 61, under Educational Services, under Other Schools and Instruction, we have modified that also in Village Commercial to be a conditional use based on your feedback. So that is use number 6116, if you have your notes with you. And if any time I'm going too fast, just let me know. On the next page, under Sector 71, there are two uses that we would like to bring forward to you for your guidance and feedback based on some feedback we've heard from the community. Currently, golf courses and country clubs and marinas are listed as permitted in both the RP10 and the Village Commercial Districts. We've heard some feedback that perhaps those should not be permitted or be permitted as conditional uses rather than allowed outright. So we'd like to get your feedback on your thoughts. So we'll start, if it's okay, with the golf courses and country clubs. If you think that should be a permitted use, a conditional use, or not permitted within the RP10 and Village Commercial Districts.
What sector is that? I'm lost.
It is under Sector 71. It's kind of at the top of the page if you're looking at your hard copy.
Okay. Oh, I see. Thank you.
The last time we talked about this, there was a young man here that spoke on this. I think he's sitting in the back, I'm not sure.
Yes, sir.
And I would like to hear what his argument was.
Okay.
If that's possible.
Mr. Chairman.
Just to refresh my memory.
It's been a while.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
It was a young guy.
I don't think
He was
he's here.
representative of some organization.
Yes, sir. That was Grant McClure,
Okay.
who was here previously. I don't see.
Well, maybe
him.
you can expound on that, his
Okay.
argument.
I think the concern with both of these uses would, if it would be in keeping with the rural character and also the protection of water quality. And I can't speak, and I don't know if I may actually have this statement.
Mr. Payne, I'm sorry.
If you would.
Just ask.
I would
Okay.
just say, you know, there was, I know they recommended that marinas not be allowed, and if golf courses were allowed, that it be conditional. I would just say at the public informational meeting, someone in the Coosahatchee area who's literally right on the water thought they might like to have a small marina. So, again, to me, it doesn't matter if it's not allowed, it shouldn't be allowed by right for sure. And if it's not allowed, that's okay. We didn't want to just make that change without bringing it to you and asking. I think one thing would be that we would be concerned about is the scale. The intent for Village Commercial is to keep everything small. So the scale and size would matter, you know. And where it's not appropriate in one area, it may very well be in another area.
What conditions could you put on it if you make it conditional?
I think definitely a size limitation.
So those would have to be developed.
Yeah, we
If
have
that
not come up
is
with
the
any
direction we go.
conditions. The first bit of comments we received was not to allow marinas. So, and again, if we were to allow golf courses, that it be conditional. But back to the golf course.
So
Working
when
it
there
out.
are some programs for golf courses offered through organizations like Audubon International that set standards for golf courses, that help to maintain natural habitat, that seek to minimize use of pesticides and chemicals that can be harmful to waterways. So I think that could be a condition that we could put on the golf courses, is that it does receive some sort of a certification for a more sustainable design and management. So I think that would be probably one of the recommendations that we might recommend for your consideration.
Okay.
And then that places and that also, by using a third-party certification system, that's not more onerous on the county staff. It's something that the applicant would be required to do and maintain.
Okay. Thank you.
And I do have, Dr. Boskin, I do have that letter. If you would like me to read it into the record, I'm happy to do so, but, okay. I think, yes, and I think some of the concerns around marinas were increased boat traffic and boat wakes, turbidity and erosion, potential dredging, encroachment on public waterways, and other pollution and water quality concerns. So those were the concerns that were mentioned. And under the golf courses as a conditional use to ensure that sustainable best management practices are incorporated into the golf course design to mitigate impacts to the environment.
Okay.
And that's from the Coastal Conservation League.
Mr. James?
If I or any one of these citizens want to build a marina, what would be the requirements? What would be the requirements that they'll have to go through in order to get this done? What would they have to do?
The requirements to build a marina.
Yeah.
Extensive.
We would have to develop that if that's even
We're going to
If
Army
there's any
Corps.
interest in doing that, we have not done that. Again, certainly small scale.
Is your question, what are the current requirements to build a marina?
Yeah, what would be the requirements?
It says there's conditions in Article 11, 7, and 24, but none were ever developed, so they don't exist. Let's see what.
But it would require coordination permits from the state.
yes.
Army
And,
Corps.
yeah, I mean,
It's
it's a
expensive.
it's a pretty extensive process that would require permitting from the state. And, you know, I'm not
It's
as
not easy.
familiar with the,
So this would really be a state thing, would not be a county thing if somebody decided to build one.
well, it has to have both. It has to
Both.
have, yes, sir.
Okay.
Permits from the state and from the county
county,
would be
okay.
required.
Yeah, I just want, make it plain to the citizen because I was just curious of what the requirement was.
I think within the context of the UHA district, what Ms. Wagner spoke about would be if they are permitted as a conditional use, that one of the conditions that you may want to consider is a smaller size so that you don't end up with a very large marina facility, that it would be potentially a small scale, and we would have to develop what those conditions would be.
Well, the beauty of a condition would be, if we're talking a marina in the Broad River, that is way different than something in Chessie Creek or Boyd Creek. So that's where the conditional use really helps you. We're not saying that U-Haul District can't have it, but what may be appropriate in the Broad River is going to be different than one of our smaller creeks. So I think a not permitted use is really limiting for the entire U-Haul District.
Another condition you could add is, not within so many feet of a residence, whether that's, whatever that number is.
And if you look at our sister county, Beaufort County, there's many communities, Moss Creek comes as an example, with small marinas that serve the community well that, I think of Skull Creek Marina. There's lots of areas like that I think would benefit some of these areas, but to say they're not permitted, that's tough.
Well, and there can be a trade-off as far as access to the water if a marina can better be provided in exchange for individual docks that can also have a very detrimental permit on a cumulative impact.
Right.
So I think that it is a lot to think about, I think.
Yeah, and so like we wanted to make sure that the general public has access to water.
Right.
We can't shut out the public from that. Now, what's in Bowling Hall, there is a boat landing, so maybe there's no need for a marina. There's access for the public to the waterway. Where in Coosawhatchee, you don't necessarily have that.
What
So I
constant?
think the separation of residents is important as well.
What I would be concerned with too, saying no marinas, is take Tooten Landing near my house.
Yeah.
It needs a dock. It needs something that you can moor a boat while you go get your trailer. So what is the differentiation between a marina
Right.
versus dockage? Yeah.
And there is a distinction,
Yeah.
certainly. There's
Yeah.
absolutely a
I mean,
distinction.
you have slips that are involved at the marina, whereas in the public boat landing, people shouldn't just leave it
Right.
alone.
So I mean, I think that would all have to be defined.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it was a non-permitted use versus a conditional use, you can take all those things into
And
account.
I think if y'all feel that it's not appropriate, I mean, the staff's not pushing for
Yeah.
it. We're just bringing it to you.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
but while we're here, I did notice, and if we could get permission, we have it showing as, conditional and residential and RL, that's, Ridgeland Lakes. I would like to change that to not permitted.
Under marinas.
Yeah. Or we can leave it as is. I don't think it really fits in there,
Yeah.
period, if you look at our map.
Do they have?
But then it shows conditions and there's not, that could be something we could work on later.
So is there any additional feedback on this particular topic, or we can come back to it, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, well, we can come back.
Okay. All right, the next one is, oh, there is one more, I'm sorry, on that page that I did not mention. Daycare services also has been changed to a conditional use based on your feedback from the last meeting. All right, the next one is on Article 7. So if we look at that first page, let's see, if you go to the very first one of, oh, is that your staff report, Lisa?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, that's fine, yeah. No. If you'll, so one of the notes on this table at the bottom, you will see an asterisk that says, these standards may be modified for subdivisions approved in accordance with the development regulations set forth in Article 22, rural small lot subdivisions. So that's a cross-reference to the alternative design standards. I just wanted to mention it is included here where the development standards are laid out. And is also, I'm sorry, it continues on the same page. And then if we move under riparian buffers, section 7.4. Keep going a little bit more, Lisa. This was a change that we actually discussed in the Planning Commission meeting last time, but just showing you that that change has been made. The setbacks should have been modified for the single-family residential development previously, but that was just a clerical error that we missed. So that has been changed to 50 feet for both the jurisdictional and the non-jurisdictional wetlands from 25, which is what it was previously. Moving on, under the village commercial, if you'll recall, we do have basic design standards that are included with the village commercial. And in number 9, under C, we added reference to signage. Again, this is something that we had talked about during our meeting previously. All right, the next section. Under Article 8, so this is our special purpose district. As I mentioned, we have modified the name of the district to be the U-Haul Overlay District. And another change that we have made under this one is for the setbacks from an engineered wastewater treatment system. We've modified that from 2,000 feet to 1,000 feet.
Yeah, this does not show.
It's not showing on this one, but we do have it on the draft document.
So y'all have not seen that change till today, but right here where we're showing the 2,000 feet, that is being changed to 1,000 feet.
Okay.
All 4 are changed? All
Yes,
4?
ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Mhm. Moving on, under section Article 11. So this is when we get into the specifications of our conditional uses. 11.7.3a, we modified that title to horse and equine, which we had discussed changing from animal specialties to horse and equine to match the use table, and also modified the setback from a residential property line to 150 feet. Okay, the next one is within the conditional uses still, but for residential, looking at the second single-family residential dwelling unit. Or we can do this one, that's fine, because that'll make more sense. No, it's fine. It's fine. I was under, it's 7, it may not be in your staff report, because this is something we talked about yesterday. Changed that 2,000. We'll do this one. Go ahead. Okay, under the family estate. So one of the things that we want to be mindful of as we are moving forward with these modifications is the family estate, obviously, as you know, is in your ordinance to so that family properties can be utilized for family members. So previously, in the rural preservation density chart, which sets forth how many additional residential units can be developed on a piece of property, the overall density was set at 1 unit per 10 acres. We'd like to bring forward a revised recommendation for 1 unit for every 5 acres, which would allow a little more flexibility for families with a maximum of 20 units.
Is that reflected in the chart we have, what you just said?
So this was based on feedback from the meeting that we had last Thursday. And we wanted to bring it forward for your discussion and comment. So we have not presented that to you formally in a document. Based on your feedback that we get today, we will update the draft as it moves forward to county council based on your recommendations.
Could you repeat the recommendation then?
Yes,
Because I
ma'am.
was not-
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So the recommendation is 1 unit for every 5 acres.
In R10? I mean-
And, no ma'am, for family estate, for
Right,
family
right.
estate. So this is under section
Right. I've got the chart.
11735.
Right.
So it'd be 1 unit for every 5 acres with a maximum of 20 units.
Is that in RP10?
Yes, ma'am. In RP10, yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to ask you to repeat it one more time.
Yes, ma'am. No, I understand. So, and it may be helpful so currently in the RP district, it's a 1-to-1. If you have 1 acre, you can have 1 unit. If you have
Right.
2 acres, you can have 2.
Right.
So in RP10, what we are proposing is 1 unit for every 5 acres with a maximum of 20 units. And again, these would be for family estates.
Right.
I was just gonna say, this is just to help families and to give them a little bit of extra density, because at the 1 for 10, if you have 100 acres, you can only get to 10 units. But as you can see, the way we've handled the rest of these, we've capped them at 12. So if someone had 100 units and you're using the number, the 5 acres, 1 for 5, you could have 20. It really would help with heirs property. But some of the comments we received were from, family land that's been in the family for 30 years or more. And one of them was a 40-acre tract. So they could only have 4, but they really might need to get 5 or 6. So it just provides a little bit of extra density for family properties.
And all people residing on that property must be related.
Yes. And the land has to belong in the family for at least 30 years or more. That's
Okay,
what our
I thought-
ordinance currently
okay.
states.
What are they allowed to do presently?
Presently, well, so
And
as you know, presently, we didn't have our P10. So this here is that chart. It shows the, in residential, community commercial, or general commercial, you can have 1 unit. Sorry about that, but if you had 1 acre, you could have 2 units. If it was zoned rural preservation, you would need 2 acres to have 2 units.
So that's a big change.
And again, that's capped at 12 units, so we're proposing to cap this one at 20. It provides a little bit of additional density for the family.
Do we have a lot of people making use of that? Do you know?
I wouldn't say a lot, but it does get used some,
It does.
yes.
If anyone out there have your phone, would you please put it on silent for us, please?
Any questions, or you want me to move forward, Mr. Chairman?
Any questions,
Or
comments?
feedback?
Any-
Are we at the end?
The last section we have is the new article, which is the rural small lot subdivision.
Oh, okay.
So I can go ahead and move forward through that one, and then we can go back to those areas if you would like me to do that. Okay, so the next section is the rural small lot subdivision standards. Okay, all right. So this one was in your staff report. And again, this is an addition since the last time we met. And the intent here is to give more flexibility for subdivision design with the goal of maintaining the rural character and protecting sensitive and critical lands. So you'll see the purpose laid out at the beginning. And the way that this functions is when you have a piece of property, first defining what would be considered the developable area. Here is defined as the base site area. So that's looking at the property minus areas that could not be developed, either because of a natural constraint, a physical constraint, or a legal constraint such as a right-of-way. So if you have 100 acres, but 50 of it's wet, then only 50 of it will count as your base site area. And that's important because what we are looking to do is not create an incentive to impact those critical resources. So those should not count towards that base site area. Another important definition is the open space preservation area. That will be the area that is protected from future development. So that you can think of this as a trade-off. The trade-off is you can have smaller lots, but in exchange for those smaller lots, a portion of the property must be permanently preserved. So the standards for this, and there is somewhat of an incentive built into this approach as proposed to encourage this as a development pattern over simply subdividing property. Again, with the intent of being able to maintain preservation of those sensitive areas and the rural character. So as proposed, the density would be 1 principal dwelling unit per 5 acres. And that's, again, based on the base site area, and a minimum lot area of 1 acre. Your open space preservation area standards are under 22.5, and this outlines how that open space can be used. So it really is intended to maintain the natural condition of those areas. It's not intended to be developed as a huge recreation complex with swimming pools and tennis courts, et cetera. So those specifications are included in here. We did receive some feedback during the meeting on Thursday that we may actually want to look a little bit more at the details of what would and would not be permitted in that area, in particular golf courses, as we had just discussed. So we'd love your feedback on that as well. And then that the rest of the property must be maintained in preservation, and that the conservation of that property would be recorded in the deed and on the plat. And there would be a restriction on subdivisions of that property in perpetuity. So that is a high-level summary, and happy to answer questions in particular on this, if you have any.
Mr. Whitney, can I ask a question regarding this? So I'm a little confused. These regulations for RP10, so some developer comes in, gets a PDD approved by the county council, these don't apply. Is that right?
These could apply in the RP10. Well, but if it's rezoned to it, so we have not at this moment proposed any changes to the PDD. And Lisa, jump in here if I'm going off on a tangent. However, I think that by having this provision in your ordinance, it could serve as guidance in the development of a PDD should one be established in this area.
But this is going to impact single property owners primarily, not corporations or large developments that are coming in here. The one that we had last meeting where they're putting 226 units or some over 200 with no green space. This wouldn't help that situation at all.
No, this doesn't help that situation because you're gonna put up half of your property. And we did have this discussion with the county attorney and the county administrator, and I do believe we kind of feel if you look at a larger number, say you have 500 acres and there's, let me see, there should be an easier way to do that. Just say your base, the bayside area. If you got it down to even 400 and you're putting up half of that, and well, then that's your base site, the 200, if you put up half. So I think the county does feel like we have accomplished something. We have 200 acres now that's going to be preserved. So,
well, I understand that. I mean, and I'm all for conservation and provision of green spaces, and maybe the county's just a step behind. But the problem as I see it, and a lot of people I talked to yesterday during the election, is they're being overrun by these corporations that are coming in and putting up huge warehouses down in the Hardyville area. So I don't know how this protects them. I don't see that it does, and maybe that's another discussion. Is that what you're saying?
I can't speak for a developer, but I would imagine he's not going to really want to come in and get 40 units on 400 acres,
So
you
maybe
know.
they go somewhere else.
Or 200 acres, basically. So I don't see this as being feasible for them, but I could be wrong. Maybe some of them do.
I mean, there are developments that follow this development pattern that are much larger scale, certainly. And this does, so right now, this only pertains to the RP10 district.
Yeah.
But we put it in its own article as opposed to putting it in the RP district so that it could, if in the future, if it made sense for it to apply to other districts, it could. And it could be modified for those districts. So you're right, this is a start, and it doesn't address open space standards in other districts. I think that's something for us to continue to consider as we move forward. So as a reminder, so we're really focused on the U-Haul district at the moment, but we're going to continue talking about planning for the entire county. So there may be some other modifications that are not in this set, or there may be some additional modifications that we need to go ahead and include now. But this is really focused on that U-Haul district, because that's the only area where we have the RP10 right now.
Okay.
And it will only be applicable to the RP10 district, and then the, you would have to, you know, put a note on the subdivision plat that there could be no, it'd be restricted from any future subdivision. That 50% of property that gets put up will be developed in the future.
Okay, but again, I know I'm kind of beating a horse here, but even in this U-Haul area, a developer can still come in, buy the property, and put a PDD on it and develop it. And it does not conform to these.
Really, that's going to be a conversation to be had with the county council. If that's something they want to restrict, I mean, you know, we have our PDD regulations. They're in a whole different, they're in Article 8 under the special purpose districts. And right now, the way that's written, anybody could ask for it. So that would be different than this. You know, anybody comes in with the PDD, they want to get additional density. We've been
Right.
working real hard to make them to make sure these PDDs, when they come through, don't really give them anything additional than what the underlying zoning would
And-
give.
I understand what you're saying. I guess my point is that we're putting a lot of new restrictions on properties that are not going to affect these large developers or these large companies coming in. These are primarily going to affect smaller
I
property
think
owners.
it will affect the large ones because this is also going to apply to those large properties. So those large properties that are really kind of prime for development will have the RP10 zoning,
Until they get a PDD.
but they're not guaranteed a PDD.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Lisa's saying is
Yeah, and I think staff plans on having that conversation with the council, but that's gonna have to be their recommendation. If they
Okay. Well, at
wanna
least-
require, maybe they don't wanna have any more PDDs, period.
But
They'll have to make that decision.
as long as the people understand, what we're doing and how it can affect them as a property owner and how can it affect them when somebody else comes in. I think this is a lot of material. I think we've seen it twice. It's a tremendous amount of material to chew up and,
Yeah.
interpret and give back to somebody.
So this Article 22 is new from what you saw last time. It wasn't
Right.
included. And really, we did this to, again, try to provide exemptions for families. Not to say a developer wouldn't use it, but again, if that base site was 200 acres, they're getting 40 units with this, 40 lots. That's all they're getting.
but there is a market
Yeah.
for people who will pay
To put your
to be in a development where they know the woods that are behind them are going to stay. Because that's
Right.
really one of the biggest challenges when you're dealing with growth, especially rapid growth in an area. Somebody buys a house that they think is in the country, and then 2 years later, the land behind them is clear cut. And this is a way to keep that from happening because that land behind you is now in a permanent conservation easement. So it is a start to try and balance the development, property rights, and rural character that we have heard loud and clear is so important to this community, particularly in the face of very rapid growth around you.
I have one, and I guess, is it okay if I ask one more question here?
Yeah.
Okay. Looking over the map showing where this special district is, it covers a huge amount of Jasper County. And then you talk about marinas and waterways, but yet you don't extend it to the Savannah River. I mean, you stop at Puresburg Road, and I'm mystified why you would take all of this property out of the county and put it in this special district and not include the Savannah
So the
River.
only thing that got closed to Puresburg Road is Oakity.
It
They
goes
have
all the way to Puresburg Road. It borders
So
Bexbury
is the
Road.
Oakity Club owns 33,000 and something
I understand
acres.
that.
And that same track that goes to Puresburg is also it's across I-95, it touches Highway 462. So if you took that property out, this doesn't go beyond, this moratorium doesn't affect anyone west of Highway 17 in one area, and then west of I-95 from exit 18 up to like exit 28, all that's everything west of I-95.
Well-
It's east of I-95.
Yeah, I'm
Anything
not
west
speaking
doesn't
to the
affect.
moratorium. I'm because we're concerned with the
No, this
regulations that are.
U-Haul, yeah.
I understand that, but in looking at this, it didn't make sense to me why it stopped just short of looking at those properties that also need protection. Under the same kinds of things that we're talking about, it seems like an oversight in my opinion. Anyway, that was just,
Yeah, and
I know
Perhaps
it's
it
not
should
going
have
to
been
change.
extended further west than it was.
Yeah, less than a mile, and you would have taken in parts of the Savannah River. I just thought it was interesting that it was omitted, and, when we're looking at comprehensive planning, it seems like, and we're talking about wetlands, in freshwater wetlands. And we missed an opportunity to include that in, and I didn't understand why. But anyway, thank you.
And just as a reminder, we will be continuing with the comprehensive plan update, which is going to be countywide, and certainly will include, you know, the area around Perrysburg. So if there are concepts or ideas that have come out of this process that make sense to look at in other areas of the county, so this is not the end of the conversation, I guess, is what I'm
Okay,
saying.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. So you are ready for question, comment?
Yes, sir.
On everything that you've covered?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm gonna start with, question. You was talking about the family is property and the density that you allow without a subdividing that property. In my view, it should be written in some form where you encourage them to subdivide that. It's helping them out temporarily, but in the long run, it creates such a big problem down the road. You can look at the incident happened on Hilton Hay that took national attention because this was allowed, this person put a home there, and then when they decided to subdivide it, she didn't get the portion where she had her house, a portion of her house fell on the partner they sold to a developer. And that's one of the reasons they created on the I-95 corridor tax collectors to help people get educated on subdividing their property. And if we promote it, we creating a bigger problem for our citizens.
So I want to make sure I capture your, so your concern is that there may be some additional education needed around the,
Well, if they come in applying to, it's been in the family 30 years, and another family member wants to place a structure on there. It should be written in some shape or form that encourage them, go ahead and subdivide.
okay. Clearly indicate ownership of the property.
Right. Because, I mean, when these family feuds, the county can't fix it then.
Right.
And it just makes it so rough for the whole county and everybody further down the road. It just doesn't work out.
Okay. Do you want to speak?
I'm gonna stop with Dr. Butler. Anything she covered, if you've got any questions, anything that you like her to clear up for you.
No, sir, I think I've asked her everything I needed to know. Thank you.
Dr. Boston,
Nothing.
Ms. Ferguson, Mr. Jenkins,
None, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Robert.
My only, it's more of a comment than a question, is the RP10 district, the more I've thought about that since we had it first proposed and did a little studying on it, how it would affect the surrounding community, is I'm curious, you know, where the 10 came from. To me, that most of those properties are probably agricultural use currently from a tax standpoint. I probably would think from a professional perspective that taking that to kind of match the agriculture status, which I think is a minimum of 5 acres unless your subject property is adjacent to another agricultural parcel. You know, it would have made sense to me to have that RP10 be 5, not 10. Being a father and have 4 boys, the one thing that we have a challenge with in our household is space. We're, you know, it's hard. We moved out of a 1/10 of an acre townhouse to a property in Jasper County to raise our family. You our needs have exceeded our 0.71 acres. And it is nearly impossible to find a parcel of land big enough to put a grassy area for my boys to play baseball, or I need a pole barn to store our toys, the camper, the boat, all the things that make living in the low country so great. You can't find it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist. And the ones that do exist are so overpriced that a normal working person, I make decent money as an architect, I can't afford it. I can't afford to buy the 5-acre or 7-acre parcels adjacent our community out in Knowles Island, which is in this district. I think the intention of the zoning ordinance is good for the community. I think the adverse effects of what it's actually going to do is going to be the opposite of enhancing Jasper County. It's going to create higher prices for this land that potentially gets split to 10 acres. Go on to any real estate listing and see what those prices go for. 25, 35,000 an acre. The average person can't afford that.
Right.
So the big developers that most of the people behind these changes and some of the politicians that are pushing it and the community members that are really pushing it are fighting. That's what you're fighting. You're really fighting the overdevelopment from the developers, but the unintended consequences, the regular person is not going to be able to afford it. I would have liked to have seen that RP10 be something less than 10.
So you think 5 is a,
To me, 5 at a maximum makes sense because that's what it takes to get the ag status. It's 5 acres. And most people want that. I think most people that are utilizing that sort of property really want that ag status. They're probably never going to build on it. And then there's still avenues, and I've told some neighbors, and some people that's asked me, there's still avenues to get zoning changes. Not that it's going to be easy, there's no guarantee, but just because we apply an RP10 to your property doesn't mean that's that way forever. Now, what does it cost to get it changed? I have no idea, but I think it would have been a little better to align, some of those sizes with some current statuses for agricultural land, and you can't even find a 10-acre lot. You'd be really hard pressed to find something 10 acres for under probably $500,000, which you're not going to afford. So I think that's an unintended consequence of some of this that's really going to affect development. In my personal opinion and professional opinion, a lot of this ordinance is going to shut down development in the county, and it's going to do one of two things. It's going to force property owners to annex their property into other municipalities, which I don't think I think we do that too much already. I think we allow that to happen probably too much already. And it's commonly the zoning department's recommendation. I'll go annex into Ridgeland, Hardyville, wherever. So that's going to happen. Property values are, the cost of property transactions are going to skyrocket. Worse than it already has. I mean, for the 462 corridor, it's already been bad in the 8 years I've lived out there. Those land values have tripled. It's going to be even worse here. And then it's also going to encourage the larger parcels of property probably not to subdivide. And I think that's from a very small conglomeration, unfortunately, of the people that have the deciding factor that's making a lot of these decisions on the zoning ordinance. They're probably okay with that because they've got their little piece of paradise on the creek, on their 0.1 acre, half acre, but then they're going to allow you not to have it. So I have a problem with that. And I think my decision on this vote is probably different than it was a month ago or whenever we last voted. And it's not an all-encompassing, because I do think the intention is good, but the unintended consequences of it's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out.
okay. I just want to provide a couple of points that you raised that I think are important to share with the community. So we are still early in the process. We've had one reading with County Council. We have a workshop that we're going to be getting scheduled with County Council. There's a public hearing with County Council. They will only have a hearing and not take action at that time. So I think this is still very much a conversation, so please don't feel like things are already decided, and your feedback is really important. On the annexation or rezoning question, I did want to point out that in the UHA overlay district, one of the things that we added in there was a reference to the future land use map. If you'll recall, on the future land use map, there are the transition areas that are kind of the donut holes, if you will, in Ridgeland and Hardyville, where it's surrounded by either the town of Ridgeland or city of Hardyville, but it's still unincorporated. But there's still some undeveloped properties in those areas, and in those areas, it probably makes sense for those to go ahead and annex in, or if they stay in the county, to at least be able to rezone to the residential zoning district so they can get that higher density. So that is specified in that overlay district, that tie to the future land use map. So I just wanted to mention that to you as well.
Yeah, I have another question, comment. When we last met, say, all the constituents that's going to be affected by this to be notified. But the thing I have a deep concern, there were some individuals already had their project in progress. Their zoning designation is going to be changed. And that's going to have a detrimental effect on what they're trying to do. Have anything been, consideration have been given to accommodate them, to help them out with all that big investment they have made, that they're not going to be able to go forward under the new zoning that's going to be put upon them?
Mr. Pinckney, would you be talking about like the gentleman that came and spoke maybe at the last meeting
That's
who
one of
bought
our
property
That's one of them.
in 2021?
He's out there.
We're not sure what to do about that. We have went back and looked, and I think we have solutions basically for almost everyone except on Highway 462 right there in that particular area. Two of the proposed uses that we know of on two separate properties, they're not allowed today under community commercial. So not quite sure how to get there. The one gentleman did say that he could make his site work now. He would change his use to fit into the community commercial, but not the village commercial. And I think we have had conversations with the county attorney. There's really about the one property, you know, Aqua Blue Pools was one that came. So they did receive a zoning certificate prior to the moratorium taking place. Whether I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, to be honest with you, but there's been a conversation between their attorney and the county's attorneys.
Mr. Chair.
I can't sit here and tell you it's worked out, but I think we're working towards it.
That's my question related to that.
Yeah.
I don't really have an issue with the zoning ordinance for the village commercial. I think that's really good for the hamlet communities. Where I disagree is the application of the village commercial to areas that I would from a citizen and an architect's perspective who does some development. They're not hamlets. You know, to me, Bowling Hall up to Old House Road to Coolers, that's not a hamlet. Those are highly trafficked commercial avenues, particularly for Cleveland construction. That is not the same as a Granville or Gilsonville or Levy or some of the true hamlets that we referred to. So who is the person or group of people that's establishing the hamlet nodes and then applying that village commercial zone to it?
So we do have a couple, we have not talked, we do have a couple of modifications to the zoning map to review with you as well, and we can certainly talk about that, but it is very much a collective conversation. And just like, so the zoning map is part of the zoning ordinance. So the recommendation of any modifications from the zoning, for the zoning map is concurrent with these changes as well, and will be a recommendation from the planning commission, just like the text will be.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really tough to apply village commercial from, and maybe not Cooler Store and Old House Road. That's, I think it could start from there and go to 170. But as we get to the landfill, to Cherry Point, that's a brownfield site. It is not prime for residential development. I don't know who would want to buy a house in there, but, you know, it would be an absolutely great spot for industrial warehouse work, commercial property.
The Old House intersection at Old House where Cooler Store is, that was actually identified years ago as a hamlet. What's on 462 near the Bowling Hall and Stroger Road area wasn't necessarily designated as a hamlet. It's just that there was already industrial businesses there, some of it zoned industrial, some of it was made non-conformant when it was zoned community commercial. And then at some point, years ago, there was that area that was zoned general commercial. So there's a lot of different zoning there. There's a lot of different uses. I do think the intent is maybe not to keep allowing some of those uses to come there.
So what we may be able to do within this ordinance update and zoning map update is at least try and contain it where it doesn't become a corridor that of, you know, commercial all the way up and down.
Yeah, the last 4 miles or whatever
Yeah.
that is. I don't know the
Yeah.
distance, but.
But it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's obviously up to county council. And what we're trying to do is listen to the feedback that we're hearing from the community. You got to understand, feedback goes from here to here. So it's at both ends of the spectrum. So at the end of the day, I will tell you, somebody will be unhappy. And I would love to make everyone happy. But at the end of the day, it has to be a consensus and in the best interest of the community as a whole. That's
I feel like
kind of
the naysayers to it are property owners in that area that have it, and somehow their voices are having a louder, far more far-reaching effect than some of the property owners that are being affected by it, who we've talked to.
Well, again, it has to be a balance, and it's not a perfect balance, and that's why you're here as representatives of the community to help lend that voice to the best way to proceed.
Mr. Pinckney, I'd like to ask him a question if you don't
Yeah.
mind. I'm really persuaded by my fellow commissioners' comments regarding the reduction from 10 acres to 5 acres and wonder how that gets accomplished as a recommendation coming from us if the majority of the group should feel the same way. Did we just make that a recommendation to you guys?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, it would be included in your recommendation. I will say, so 5 acres is, yes, still rural, but if you think about the cumulative impact of everything becoming 5 acres, it does start to eat away at the rural character because your landscape changes pretty significantly, even though 5 acres seems like a lot. If you look at other communities where they have adopted 5 acres, it does have an impact on the character. And that's why we created this rural small lot subdivision, so that you could do the 5 acres, but maintain the balance of the rural character and the preserving. Now, are those numbers what they need to be? Do those need to be tweaked? I think all of that still is very much open for discussion.
I think
But the 5 acres, it doesn't, it will start to change the character of the county in a little different way, more so than the 10 acres would. But at the end of the day, it's up to the community on the way in which you want to proceed.
And you made reference to places where they've adopted that. Where would that be?
Mm-hmm. So there are areas in southern Effingham County where they have their mini farm subdivisions.
And those are 5 acres?
That are 5 acres, and it, you know, I'm not saying it's not still semi-rural, and it certainly is It's just going to be a different character than what you have now. But they're, like, I'm thinking of the area around Old River Road, if you're familiar with that part of the southern end of Effingham County, where they have, you know, fly-in communities where they have a little private airport and somebody flies in and they have their 5 acres of property. But again, I'm just trying to provide some of the rationale behind the 10 acres versus the 5. But it's,
Providing the option to have 5-acre lots doesn't stop someone from having 10-acre lots,
correct.
right? It just provides an opportunity to provide, like he said,
Yeah.
people that
Sure.
can't afford 10 acres. So, anyway, but so it would come as a recommendation from us.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Jenkins.
If that's okay.
Yeah, whenever. Yeah. No, I didn't know if they had any more questions.
None of this would affect the tenants that is already there, right? Whatever
And-
be passed today because they're grandfathered. These rules would only affect new tenants, right?
So it would, as far as something that is already built or a business that's in operation already, it would not affect them. If somebody has an undeveloped piece of property, then these changes would apply to them. But if there's an existing residence or an existing building or an existing business,
They're grandfathered.
they would be grandfathered. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Explain it further there. Mr. Jenkins lived off that 462 corner. They got communities branched off there. How deep into those communities this overlay district goes?
Do you want, so we've got the map up that we can show you. So the green area,
From Coosahatchee to 170 on
On
both
the
sides
east-
of the road.
on the east side of 95,
That's correct.
from Coosahatchee
Yeah, but
south.
I mean, along that 462 corridor.
Yes, sir, both sides.
Yeah. How deep it go into these communities that's already been established there? I'm trying to see.
So I think, like with the highway corridor overlay district, it's 500 feet deep on the properties, but this would be an overlay district that's gonna, basically go all the way to your marshes, your waterfront on the east side. It's gonna capture every property as far as the overlay district, every property within this green shaded area. But, generally, it's at the intersection of Highway 170 and 462, going north and whatever, let's see, that'd be north and east.
That's the Coosahatchee Scenic Highway, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
down here, it's Highway 170 going to Buford. And it's generally everything east of I-95. You do have the big Okatee property, which connects to 462 and it runs all the way over to Pierceburg Road. So when it looks big, that extra property is only Okatee Club.
But on the northeast
then,
side, the northeast side of 462,
northeast side of 462.
not toward Oakley. It's like you got
Broad River side.
Roseland
Yeah.
toward the Broad River.
All of it, to the marsh.
All of that's included. And then there is this little area here at Coosahatchee, which is exit 28, here where the cursor is. And, I'm sorry, it's right here, exit 28 here. That's Morgan Dollar Road. This does go up to Gregory Neck, and it does encompass a little bit of properties just west of Highway 17 and 95 there.
Well, what I'm asking, an area like Mr. Jenkins, Roseland,
That's in there.
a lot of those been zoned residential, small lots.
So
And
the residential properties, they're not changing as far as zoning, but they are located within the overlay district. So any new development, even residential, has to comply with those extra standards that's in the U-Haul overlay district.
And those are primarily setbacks, the setbacks, and then the septic tank to have a second field in the setbacks. So those are really the standards that would apply to anyone within that overlay district.
That's a big blow for those small communities.
Yeah.
Real big blow.
And with most amendments we've ever done, especially the larger they are, we find that when we implement it, we have to kind of go back and revisit it because there's going to be a situation you didn't think of, or
But
if you
once it's
find
passed-
that a lot of people are.
I mean, once it's passed, and a lot of these folks, they don't understand, they don't know what's really gonna be happening to them. You know, Mr. Robinson speaking of like the Nose Island, he did that, you know, he got a pretty good sized lot, but these folks in the smaller area there, that'll have a detrimental impact on them.
I mean, I have under acre of land, I live in the U-Haul overlay district, so, you know, I'm zoned residential, my lot will now probably become non-conforming because I'm on a septic tank and I don't have an acre of land. But I'm also grandfathered in, and really it's not gonna have any detrimental effect on me.
I mean, what some of these other families, they wanna allow their kids to be able to establish it. That'd make it almost impossible for them to do that.
So we do have in the overlay district, there's a section about non-conforming lots that I think will speak to your question, Mr. Jenkins. If a lot of record at the time of the adoption of this ordinance does not contain sufficient land area and/or lot width to meet the minimum requirements, such lot may be used as a residential use as a building or placement site for a structure permitted in the district, provided that they can meet the minimum yard setbacks for the ordinance and all other standards are met. So it does have a provision in there for non-conforming lots, and we can maybe take a look at that in more detail and make sure that it might help to address. So is your concern, is this if somebody has a lot currently that's not developed, that they would be able to build a home? Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Curiosity killed the cat out now. How do we fix Mr. Pinckney? How do we fix what Mr. Pinckney just asked? How do we fix that problem?
Which?
About people would be, this new rules would be detrimental to the people that where I live.
So that it's not, so the concern is for existing property owners, correct?
Right.
I have a neighbor, 250 some acres. They've subdivided some property for a family, for their children. They need one more lot. And we're gonna all the other lots are probably 3/4 of an acre to maybe an acre. I don't exactly know, but it's about that. Under these new zoning ordinances, they would not be allowed to subdivide another 1 acre parcel for their 4th child.
They could in a rural lot subdivision.
And a family estate.
And a family estate.
Well, that would be 5 acres as we proposed to.
That's what I'm saying, it would be 5.
But they could do it in a rural lot subdivision.
1 acres.
They could do a 1 acre lot.
That's why we created the rural lot subdivision to try and help some families. But
I mean, with some of these lots, they're half-acre lots.
So I think most of the half acre are staying residential,
Yeah, they're
correct?
staying
The-
residential.
The half acre lots are staying residential.
It would be interesting to see if there was a way, because there's a big difference between, say, Okatee, that's how many acres you said, 33,000 or whatever it was.
33,000 something.
Yeah,
It's one
so
tract of land.
like an RP10 to a property like that, or like, what's the big, that owns most of the land on 462, Good Hope. You know, that's obviously a huge piece of property. So an RP10 to a property like that probably makes sense. And then, you know, but if you go, and I don't know what the number would be, you know, 250, under 1,000 or under 250 to be something smaller would make sense. But, you know, you feel for people that have owned this land, because I think it's going to prohibit them to subdivide it. And in certain cases, it's for their, you know, obviously they have it's good they have an avenue through the heirs property to potentially do it. But, you know, I've been working on a 5-acre tract for a couple of years. It's a pipe dream, but, you know, this kills it. I mean, it likely will kill any opportunity for a young professional to buy a property that they can afford, which I don't think is the intended effect of the ordinance.
Okay.
I'm still not there. I just ask, how do we fix, like I live in Roseland, how do we fix what Mr. Pinckney just talked about? How do we fix that problem?
So
You allow them to be rezoned.
I think that, so the smaller lots are not being rezoned. So Lisa's got the proposed map up. So the lots that are currently zoned residential, which are in the yellow, those are not changing.
And here's a Roseland Road, I mean, nothing's.
Yeah, I see Annette Road, that's where I live, on Annette Road.
So those are not changing zoning. Those are going to stay residential, which is what they are currently.
But will the overlay district setbacks apply to these smaller lots in those communities?
So
From wetlands, yeah.
from wetlands, yes, sir. But there's also a variance process where if a property owner has a piece of property, I mean, that's what the variance process is for. And the variance process is specifically to address physical constraints that are particular to a piece of property. So that would be, but we can look at the way that the ordinance is structured and do a little more analysis on how many properties might be impacted and if there's a way to be able to address that proactively. I don't have an answer for what the solution is at the moment, but I've definitely made note of it, and it's something that we can take a look at.
You know, the thing that I was looking into, Jasper County is 22 square miles. 69% of the land in Jasper County is owned by large landowners. And when you make these regulations, it applies to the ordinary citizen that have been struggling for the last 100 years. And I read an article about Hampton County that they're trying to change. Their school system lose 50 to 100 students every year because individuals, it's so hard for them to develop, they move elsewhere. And even they're building a new school, they don't have the tax dollars to sustain the school because if it continuously, it'd be so small. The same thing will happen to Jasper if you make development so restrictive for the rural areas. The school will get smaller and the tax dollars won't be there. And I just mentioned Roseland, but on the other side of the road, it's the same thing. There's a small community there where the school system feeds kids from. If they can't get where they can do affordable housing, because the development, they're not building affordable housing and use family land, it'd be so restrictive, they're gonna move elsewhere. And that quarter covers a large amount of land, and those communities, I know when I went to school, they used to be large. I don't know how great it is now. I would have to look at it in more detail.
So, again, one of the goals that we are looking at, and we can certainly relook at all these things, is the water quality as well. Septic tanks, a failing septic tank, when you have many failing septic tanks, it is a very, very difficult problem to solve. So we're trying to be proactive in looking at how development can be balanced with, because once you end up with a whole bunch of failing septic tanks along a river, it's a public health hazard. So it's a balance. But I hear you as far as wanting to maintain property owners to be able to do, use their property. Again, it's that spectrum and where we land on that spectrum. But that's the reason for the provision of the setbacks and the septic tank having the requirement for a second drain field, because septic tanks, particularly in areas that are in floodplains or in close proximity to wetlands and rivers, historically fail over time.
Well,
And so we want to have a system built in where if a septic tank does fail, you can at least put in another one and have a functioning system.
Before Jasper Water Authority came and did a presentation to us, and I asked the question, in their planning, were some of the rural areas considered putting in water and sewer? That was not on their radar, not for right now.
Right. Which you're absolutely right. So we're working to balance where infrastructure is available and where development can be best accommodated. So that's the other reason that it makes sense in some places to encourage annexation or to have development, higher density development in the areas that have the water and sewer. And looking at roads is important as well. So again, it's all about a balance of, we've heard loud and clear from the community that no one wants to 4-lane 462.
It's not true.
Well-
I would love it.
That's not true. I tell you, if
The majority of what we have heard is there is not a strong, that most people that we've heard from.
Who are 65 and older without kids that are going to be driving that road every day, joining the 5 billboards of dead kids that have been hit on that road by drunk drivers.
I'm not saying there's not safety improvements
I'm just
needed.
saying, the
I'm not
demographic
saying,
that you're talking about doesn't represent your community.
okay.
And I live on Roseland Road, off of Coosatchee Scenic Highway. And I would invite all of you to come down there on Saturday evening, on Sunday morning, when there's checkout time from Hilton Head.
It's terrible.
It's horrible.
Well, I'm getting a little bit off. We're not going to solve 462 right
It's a
now.
disaster.
But my point is, as it is right now, it cannot handle the traffic. So if we put development regulations in place that encourage more development, it's only going to continue to exacerbate a problem that exists today. So looking at the infrastructure is an important consideration in all of this as well. So,
Mr. Pinckney, I'd like to know if they have any idea how many people would be affected based on your concern. Do they have any idea? Can we ask that?
You can act.
Lisa? He's being nuts.
Dr. Butler, then you.
Lisa, or excuse me, Denny, do we have any idea how many homeowners would be affected in the way that Mr. Pinckney has described by the changes in this regulation? Any idea at all?
as far as the overlay district or the rezoned properties?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, and then, so there's different things, are you talking about?
Well, you heard what Mr. Pinckney's concern was.
Properties that are already developed or properties that aren't,
He's
you know?
talking, what, his concern was that there are people who have land that may want to put their family member there and would be unable to do so if we implement these regulations. So my
So
question is,
that's why we have the family estates.
but how many people might be affected? Any idea? I mean, are there a lot of people?
I don't know, you know, the reason we were going like, when we first started, in the staff report, it says, you know, anybody that was rural preservation's going to RP10. Well, we did go look and see how many people did that affect, and that was about 300 people who were zoned RP. We didn't realize it was that many that didn't have 10 acres. So we said we've got to back them out, because that's 300 properties we're automatically going to make non-conforming. So we've done that. We did look at that. We didn't look at what Mr. Pinckney's talking about, but we have family estates today for residential, community commercial, rural preservation, and that is an option to anybody who has family land that has the property in their family for 30 years, whether it's theirs property or not, whether it has a title or doesn't have a title to the land. So we've made provisions for that, for the RP10. So I mean, when you're talking about the smaller lots, which I think Mr. Pinckney was talking about, you know, in residential, you do have to have an acre just to get to the second unit under that current ordinance. The answer is no. We haven't looked to see how many properties might be owned by families, and we've heard from several, but.
Mr. Chairman, Lisa, would this come back before us before we go to county council?
So as you know, if you remember or not, it went to county council. Y'all made a recommendation and wanted to see it again before second reading. Any substantial changes will come back to you, and we would like to get some recommendations from you today.
Oh, okay.
We're going to have the public hearing September 19th. We're not asking for a second reading on that day. County council would like to have a workshop, and I think maybe it would be important for y'all to be invited to that and participate in it. So I think I'll make that recommendation.
Because I was just concerned about what we said today. We'll get a chance to make sure it's fixed. That was my concern about this going before county council, before we get a chance to see the changes.
Well, do you want it to come back again, or would you like to, maybe, would you be satisfied if you were so we have presented the changes that you recommended last time, then we have some additional ones we're gonna walk back through, because we want to get your recommendation on that. And then, I will suggest that, council include you in their workshop.
Okay.
And then, you know, if at any time y'all want it to come back, or again, if there is another substantial change, it does come back.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pinckney, I would like to address my colleague at the end of the aisle. I wholeheartedly agree with some of your comments, and being one of those older people, I understand where they're coming from, while at the same time I understand what you're saying. But you have to realize how we got here, why we're doing this. It's not going to be in the best interest of all of Jasper County, maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, they're saying, yeah, well, let's keep this area, let's preserve what this county is right now. And I agree, Mr. Pinckney, we have large landowners that have always controlled our system, but because all that land is just like $2 and something an acre. So we're looking at a lot of developments coming into the county, and hopefully some of the things that are happening with the growth is going to increase what goes into the school system. But at the same time, I see the folks are saying, well, let's limit some of this growth. No, let's slow it down. And I can understand that as well. So there's got to be a balance between the two, and that's what we're trying to find. But like you say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that's what's been happening here. And that's why I asked Lisa, I think you asked the question, how many people? We asked Lisa to send out notice to all of those who this was going to affect. And I assume that has been done. Yes. So all of those people who own property in this overlay have been notified. Now, how they respond, And when they come to these meetings, that's another story, but they have to be notified. You have to let them know what's about to happen before it happens. So I agree with you in a sense.
So there's a lot of people that I think were anti-development. This all started because of Chelsea Plantation. This is where it started from.
Yeah, that's where we started.
So there were people that are behind the initiative, which is fine. I understand they got a lot of valid points. So you have that group of people. There were people who were behind that because it was Chelsea Plantation. Now that they've seen or realized what now it's affecting my property, I've talked to a dozen people. I get phone calls all the time. How does this affect me? I had one just now. I literally just had an email come through. I see the signs. How does that affect my property? And now they're not so for it, which is what I always try to say. It's fine. We can vote one way or another based on all the data and information we have. But it's going to affect people, a lot of people negatively, while affecting parts of our community in a positive light. So I like what you just said. We got to try to find the balance. I personally don't think it's quite there, but we're working to it. I think the intention is good. Just we got to find the balance of what's fair for all.
Okay.
And can protect. I mean, I'm all for protecting our natural resources and the Chichessie River, Boyd Creek, and but you can't apply that same logic to everyone.
I've got a big development coming up right behind my house, and I'm not for it. But the property owners, they own the property, and they want to.
That's always the dilemma. Who am I to dictate what my neighbor can do with his land? I'm nobody.
Well, the balance is that what your neighbor does to their land does have an impact.
It will.
On everyone. So it is that balance, and there's no perfect answer. There's not a perfect answer. We are going to try and get as close as we can to perfect for this community, and that's why your input is so valuable. So,
I will say, and this is what I said earlier, just like Dr. Bostic said, he's got a big development coming behind him. Those large property owners that have been here forever, they're not going to divest themselves of that asset. Oakity Club has been here a long time. They're not going to start selling off 10-acre plots of land anytime soon. This is going to affect smaller landowners and not these large plantation property owner, whatever you want to call them, former plantations. And the ones that have been sold are now huge warehouses out in Levy. If you haven't been there, you should go see what some people have in their backyard.
and those are in the city. Yeah. And so again, the idea is to try and be proactive, because you might think that they're never going to sell, and tomorrow they sell. And it has happened time and time again.
Again, it's not going to affect them because they will have a PDD going into this. Okay. I promise
I think we're going in circles, but I mean, we hear you, and we will continue to work and see, if we can, maintain the spirit and make some tweaks, if that's feasible.
Any recommendations you have, we will forward them to the county council.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I have a minute? I just have I am concerned, and I don't know what we're gonna do about it, but we have to someday sit with county council and vote affordable housing problem in this county. Let me say this. I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and the way things are going now, that none of us that sit here today, our children will be able to live in Jasper County if we don't do something about affordable housing. Because there ain't, you probably can count the citizens in Jasper County that can afford a $300,000 or $400,000 house. And we talk about so much stuff and we just skip over this. But I tell you, if we don't get a hand on it, we're gonna be in trouble.
I agree with you that affordable housing is incredibly important for any
sad.
community.
It just.
And it's challenging when you're the fastest growing county in South Carolina.
Right.
Is that correct? Or up there? It is a sticky wicket that no one has completely figured out. But you are, I don't disagree with you at all that affordable housing is critical to, and that is something we can also look at in the comprehensive plan.
Yes, ma'am.
To look at more of a strategy that might be something different than
Yes,
what's in
ma'am.
your zoning ordinance. So again, this is a continuing conversation, but valid points, for sure. Valid
Thank you.
points.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, today, you're looking for the commission to give you a recommendation that you can take to council before they have, another discussion or reading.
Yes, sir. We're looking for your feedback on those couple of items that we mentioned. If you have particular direction on those. We do have a couple of modifications in the zoning map that we'd like to share with you, and make sure that those are in the right direction. And then we will continue this conversation with county council at the workshop.
So this is, the community, this is the Coosawhatchee, area right here. Here's Morgan Road, I-95, and Highway 17. So here's the exit. When we first brought this to you, we were proposing not to change the community commercial here on the west side because a lot of that already has, is developed. And it didn't catch right here where the old truck stop is and the old Dairy Queen. All of that was left out of the U-Haul overlay district. And it was gonna be community commercial, so we thought, you know, keeping it, the same zone, and we recommended everything on the east side of 17 being residential because there's not, you know, there was about 2 commercial developments on this side. Neither one of them's operating. They're abandoned, even some dilapidated structures, vacant properties, 2 churches. The churches can operate in residential. So we proposed changing all that to residential. At our meeting the other night, we heard from many of the property owners who are going residential, and they don't like that. And really, if you think about it being between Highway 17 and I-95, that's not very good for residential. So we're gonna recommend, and we would like to get your recommendation on this. We're gonna recommend all of this that you see here with the exception of this one parcel because it doesn't have access to Highway 17. This is used for a church overflow park, and they were at the meeting and didn't make any comments. I think they're okay with that, but we're gonna recommend all the rest of these properties go to village commercial. Village commercial will blend them with the community commercial right there at the exit. So,
And that's also consistent with your future land use plan as well.
So that's a change we'd like to recommend. And
What is the zone now, Lisa?
it's then community commercial.
So, if it switches to village commercial, they will be able to do the same thing and it's more restrictive?
It would be smaller scale commercial, and then there would be some design standards as well for the village commercial.
2,500 square feet.
I need to stop it later
Means there can't be a Buc-ee's on that exit.
That's
here.
right.
All right, I went too far. Okay.
2 gas pumps. I think Tiger Express owns all 3 of those parcels though.
Yeah.
Do they?
That's
There's-
what I'm trying to get. Okay. This, corner here, and it's shaded like this because it had a community commercial strip across it, and the rest was residential. Over here, it's just not showing right on this map. This is supposed to be the existing zoning, but this corner here is community commercial, and we were recommending that both of those corners go to residential. But, based on feedback we received, we think where it's community commercial there now should go to village commercial. And then, let's switch this back. And then you have village commercial out here. Some of these properties right in here, just in the middle, were split zone where the community commercial line runs the same. And I just personally hate seeing split zoning, so I saw this as an opportunity to get rid of some of that, but that's created some heartburn with some of those property owners. So what we'd like to recommend is these properties right here that were split zone and the ones on this corner is just taking them back. The community commercial would be replaced with village commercial.
And they would stay split zone.
And they would stay split zone. Which means if they were to develop, either they have to subdivide at those zoning lines, the ordinance says so, or they would need to come in and ask for a rezoning of the whole parcel. But that would make them happy as well. They would be satisfied. So we felt that was a pretty easy fix.
Are there any businesses there currently on that property? Is there any business development on that property?
The county actually owns one property. That's this one here. That's where the Roseland convenience site is to take your trash and the
Fire station.
fire station.
Oh,
on
okay.
that property. These other properties, there are two, were both of them being used, two stores on two of the properties.
Oh, okay.
Small stores on them, whether they're being used as a store, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Then on this corner, these are vacant.
You seen them
I'm sorry, on
stores?
North Side corner, those properties are vacant here.
Corner stores on the store.
Okay, thank you.
They got food out of that one.
Lisa, I know I got that paperwork. Can you pull it up and let us see what go in Village Commercial? Can you please, ma'am?
Village
Yeah,
Commercial?
please, can you pull it up on you?
Back in that area?
Yes.
Okay.
That green. The green.
Unless I slide this, sometimes I forget. Okay, this here's the current. Again, these that are shaded, there's a community commercial strip under that, and the rest of it's residential. They're split, so that's why they're shaded. That's all of these properties here. These, on each corner of Roseland Road
Yeah.
is currently community commercial.
Okay.
On Knowles Island, both corners of Knowles Island is currently zoned community commercial. This corner is not showing it, but this is just an error on this map that was made for this purpose. If you go to Q Publix, you can see it zoned community commercial.
It's the cute piece of property.
And this one's split zoned again. So we're recommending where community commercial is here, it goes to village commercial.
Okay.
And the recommendation you saw was like this. It was taking this one to residential, this one to RP10, and then this dark green was all village commercial. So we're asking if you would consider, where community commercial is now, that we just go back in, we keep these here split zone, it's just community commercials replaced with village commercial. That's our request.
Was that request for those two corner properties on Knowles Island by the owner?
Yes, he felt that he was the only one there we were taking the commercial away from, which we weren't. He was correct. And then the ones in community commercial, those property owners came to, and
That's just interesting. The one on the right had a house on it, so it was residential, and they tore it down.
all set.
Yeah, was the old
It's just
Brandon
funny
house.
because that
But
particular
that's
land,
split, so it's split zone today.
it's a prime example of what I'm talking about though. That landowner would be absolutely for this zoning ordinance change, but yet he doesn't want it to affect his two pieces of property on the corner of Knowles Island Road.
But,
That's the problem.
yeah, but
Well, I
that,
think it was more looking at, because it was already commercial, just keeping it commercial was his concern.
but the same guy that owns over 100 acres of land on that little, he tore that building down. I'm not gonna call his name, but he owns all that strip. When you make that right, you see the name on the property there that goes all the way back. The same guy that tore that house down, he owns all that property.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I know.
but I'm not gonna call his name, but it's on, yes.
But he was the only one there.
Right, right.
It's just,
Struck the commercial off of.
Yeah, but the
Well,
Branham used to live in that house. John Branham used to
And
live in that
it's
house.
the same as what we did it, so it's just basically what we're doing.
Yeah.
What we're doing at Coosawhatchee, we're also proposing we do here, and we're also proposing we do at the commercial area at Okatee, which is what we'll show you next.
Right, yeah.
This here's another area around the Old Baileys. Sorry, this is another one. It's just not shown right on here, but, right across here is currently community commercial. The rest of it's rural reservation today. That's how the zone is. And then across on this one is, it's split zone with community commercial and rural preservation. And then these two pieces, the same thing. And we were recommending that these that were split zone, these two go to residential, and that this on the corner goes to RB10, and, this one. So we're asking just where the community commercial is on this side of North Okatee Highway to, change the community commercial to village commercial, and it again leaves split zoning. So those are the three things that we're suggesting. Over here across the street, these do go to residential, but this here's a residential community. And this is the Midway Village Circle with some mobile home park. Residential would be more appropriate. Just to show you this across the street is, we're not proposing to change this over here,
Okay.
just this side. Would you support those changes?
Is this where, excuse me,
Any question on the changes?
well, I'm,
Doc- Go ahead.
go ahead, okay, thank you. Is this where we just approved that subdivision?
Yeah, it
It
is,
is.
it's
the next
back
one.
here on the residential piece.
Back there?
Yeah, this-
Okay, what is it, Okatee Park, that's already a development there?
that's the one we looked at, that had all the green space.
Yeah, this Okatee Park Circle, that's been developed. It's, I think, probably pretty much built out. There could be a,
Okay.
It had 120 or so single families. It's the one that I showed you that had all
Oh,
the
that's
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
okay.
that's right.
Okay. And so you're proposing to, could you tell me one more time? I can't wrap
So,
my brain around this right now.
so this dark green here,
Uh-huh.
that represents village commercial.
Okay,
This piece on the corner, it doesn't show it here on the existing zoning, but right about here, all the way across, was a community commercial.
okay,
It was split zone. It was also across this property right here. And then these two properties. So what we were recommending when you last saw this was taking these two to residential, but we
Mhm.
did hear from the property owner there, they wanted their community commercial to be village commercial. And we've heard from this property owner, he felt that he was the only one here, that was losing that community commercial. Again, a split zone, I really thought it was an opportunity to get rid of split zoning, but our recommendation now, after having our informational meeting, is just right here where they had, the split zone properties with the community commercial, replacing it with village commercial on those properties.
okay. Thank you.
Dr. Boston,
No.
Ms. Ferguson, Mr. Jenkins?
My final question, Mr. Chairman. At least about 5 years ago, whatever happened to that group of people that came before us was supposed to build that veteran stuff on Palms, that was Nose Island, Palms Key?
That
They were
never
supposed to,
happened. You know,
I mean, is that property?
They've sold. 3
Sold?
of those.
Yeah,
They've sold
several
3
of
the
them
7
have sold.
parcels. It's still in the works, but I heard that Palm Key's up for sale, or about to be.
So they sold it?
Yeah, and the veterans, the people who supported the veterans, they backed out too. So it's parts of it have sold, not all of it.
3 of the 7
Yeah.
tracks have sold, and I'm trying to get it for it.
Oh, because, okay, well, I was just curious because I.
The
didn't-
PDD that was approved would never go through now because it doesn't even apply to the land that they currently own.
Are y'all okay with these proposed changes?
Yes.
This is just
Oh,
where
yeah.
there was community commercial, basically, and going to village commercial.
Mr. Robert,
You got any questions?
No. And I would be fine with it.
you need a motion on the approval of the changes on the map.
I think all we need is guidance,
Okay.
and then maybe we could go back over to other things in the
Yeah,
zoning
just a couple little
tags.
things, if we could get some feedback on those, then we will, I think, be in a good spot. So the main thing was,
Something up, just in
oh,
case you
so
need.
fabulous, okay. So, under the use chart, so there's the golf courses and country clubs and marinas are actually 2 separate uses, so maybe we could talk about the golf courses and country clubs, how you want those to be reflected in the use chart. Currently, they are shown as permitted,
Condition.
Conditional.
conditional?
I
Okay.
agree with that.
And then the marinas.
Yes.
And, sorry, what?
Marinas,
Conditional.
Conditional.
conditional, okay. Perfect. All right. Then I think we're okay on that
Yeah, we
one.
did that.
Family estates. Should have labeled my tabs.
Why, kind of ask a question about the family estate one. Because it's an RP10, it would allow 1 unit per 5 acres with a max of 20 units, correct?
Maximum
For
20.
20.
is what we're proposing.
And the current is, in the RP, is,
It's 20.
it's, if you have 2 acres, then you can have 2 units, so it's basically a unit per acre.
And that's capped out.
And that's capped at 12.
What did
It-
you say the maximum was now in RP 10?
In RP 10, we're proposing 20 as the maximum.
Oh, I mean in RP, what is it?
In RP, it's 12.
12,
Max.
yeah, okay, I thought it was.
Is there a way to, well, I'm assuming there's consideration for the RP 10 being 5 and not 10. If that was the case, could you also consider the family estate to allow 1 unit per 1 acre versus 5? The only reason you would want to do that, I would think, is families want to preserve the timberland. So you want to preserve the largest body of land possible because they timber it. That's how most of these families and these big corporations afford to keep the land they got. They timber it. So if you had a 40-acre tract, you wouldn't want to subdivide it by 5 acres if you didn't have to. You know, most people would be pretty happy with a 1 acre. I mean, our zoning ordinance for residential is a one unit per 1 acre on a, so why would we not, it gets back to some of the things I was talking about, aligning the RP 10 to 5 acres, because that also allows the agriculture tax exemption. So give the family, if we're trying to protect the family heirs property, why would we not give them something similar that they could have if it was zoned residential? You know, 1 for 1.
Well, just because the residential and the rural preservation are different districts.
But we're
so-
only talking about the family estate property. Like, could you, I know there's some people in the community that's been fighting the 5 acres for the heirs property. But why could we not pitch something that would still be somewhat in alignment with one of our other zoning districts?
So within the RP 10, you want the heirs property or the family estate?
Yeah, to
density
be a
would be-
1 acre site so they can maximize the agricultural portion of that piece of property collectively, because that's what they're gonna do. I'm thinking about the Coleman family that lives on Knowles Island Road. you know, that would apply to them.
What is that under? What is that under? I can't find it. It's probably in this, probably in there.
That's where the page is numbered.
Yeah, right here.
Number
No.
19.
19.
I just printed this off.
Oh. What's it?
So if you had,
And I'm not saying change it for RP10 or say it's an RP5. It was only do that for the family estate.
Oh, here it is.
When it's, you're in the family, allow them the opportunity to have a, you know, 5 acres is a lot. That's a lot to maintain. That's a lot for an individual
Right.
homeowner
so,
to maintain. So I feel like we pull these numbers out of wherever we pull them from, but where does it come from?
so if the density, so if we would allow for a 1 acre lot, but the overall density was still the 1 per 5 acres. So it would still allow for a smaller lot, but it would still maintain a more rural density?
Yeah, and
Would-
maybe the
would that
number
be
ain't
a-
20, maybe it's still 12 or, you know, something.
It's 12.
Maintain the density, but allow that
Allow for the
landowner
smaller
to have a
lots.
smaller lot for their family member. That way they can maximize the gains on the land that is being preserved, which I would think every family that has heirs property is considering. It's,
Are you understanding what he's saying? You are? I'm not, I haven't gotten it yet. I'm slow today for some reason. Tell me what it is that you want.
so timber is valuable by the number of acres that are being cut.
Right.
And harvested.
Right.
And it happens, however long it happens, 20 years, every 7 years or something. So if you had that piece of heirs property, most people probably want to preserve the long-term investment opportunities of that piece of property. So limiting those families to a minimum of a 5 acre tract, that's, could be pretty limiting for somebody that owns less than 250 acres. So, and I think there's been lots of people in the community that's been upset about, hey, we can't subdivide our family property in less than a 5 acre tract. So why could we not, in the family estate category, in a RP10, which, you know, hopefully becomes an RP5, but whatever happens, TBD, why could we not allow them a smaller piece of property at the same density, 1 per, so they can maximize the amount of,
So what density are you proposing?
I think for the family estate, right now it's a 1 unit per 5 acres with a max of 20 units.
Mine says 1 per 10. Am I in the
So
wrong place?
this is one that we're proposing, it's not in your
It's not
written
in it.
document.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
one
okay.
we're
Not in
just-
here.
Okay.
That's one of the highlights that they're asking us to
Yeah.
propose today.
And I would like to just point out with family estates, you don't have to subdivide, you don't have to cut out. So you could find just an area that's gonna be your family compound, and your density just can't exceed the 1 per 5. So if you have 100 acres, you could have 20. You don't have to subdivide, but
Well, most people you want to, I mean,
and
it's,
there may be, you know, what we see today, which usually is heirs property that's taking advantage of this, they don't ask to subdivide. So I think what you're proposing is just in cases where they do subdivide.
yeah, you know, one of my neighbors that wants to, they need 1 more lot. It's give them the opportunity to have a smaller lot to match the other ones that are 1 acre. That still conforms with if the zoning change happened, because anyone can still go for a zoning change. That's why this commission's even here, is that's what we review on a day-to-day basis. It would still be in conforming with a similar zone on a similar type of property if it wasn't in an RP10.
So is, just to clarify what you're proposing, it would allow them to subdivide a smaller lot of 1 acre, but still maintain the
1 unit.
density of 1 unit per 5
Correct.
acres,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
See, the thing, there's two different things. If it's heirs property, they're not legally subdivided.
Right.
If they subdivide it, and usually they get a court order, regardless to what size it is, DSR have to record it because it's an order from the judge.
Right, and we're looking outside, I mean, if the court says this is what we gotta do, that's what's gotta be done. I mean, that's,
What we're proposing, allowing them to put up to 12 units on that without subdividing it, just as a family compound, being individual is a blood member of that family.
Right.
Well, if they choose to, like I said, encourage them to subdivide it, whatever the small piece or whatever the portion equals out to, that judge give that order. They don't have to have the infrastructure put in, the roads, the setbacks, and none of this. They have to record those deeds.
Right, I mean, if the court says this is what has to be done, I think that's,
We don't have to issue a building permit. If there's no
Yeah.
infrastructure, we don't have to issue a building permit and wouldn't issue a building permit. But we do have to subdivide if we get it. If we have to approve the plat. We have a stamp that we put on it that's for court-ordered subdivision, and there's a note that says it may not meet the standards of the zoning ordinance, and that no permit of any kind is guaranteed from septic to building.
So we can't enforce density, is that what I'm hearing?
Can't do what?
We can't enforce density requirements on heirs property? Is that what?
No, he's saying if the heirs went to court and petitioned the judge, you know,
Oh,
to
if they
split
did that.
equally,
Oh, okay.
that we have to abide by that court order.
Right.
And that is true.
Right.
And subdivided.
Right, right.
But
I
we're-
thought it had already been done.
I think the lens that we want to look at these revisions is, you know, if it goes to courts, that's another pathway.
Absolutely.
We're trying to look at it through the
Yeah,
Jasper
by-
County.
By right.
Yeah.
You're able to do this by right versus
Yes, yeah.
by legal means.
So going back to what's been proposed, that's really not necessary because they already don't have to, I mean, they can do what he's asking already.
Right.
Is that correct?
Without
Without
subdividing.
It's good
subdividing.
Without
education.
subdividing.
Without subdividing?
But if they do want to subdivide so that they each have their own tax bill, then
They couldn't do it.
That's
Less than
what
5
they're
acres.
he's proposing for those that it only be, the lots would only have to be split 1 acre but not exceed the 1 unit per 5 acres.
In overall density, which is what's allowed in the rural lot subdivision too.
Right, which that makes sense that they would be the same. It's, I don't know, it was just the
So I
thought.
guess the argument would, or not argument, but the flip side would be they can do it under, they can already do it under the rural lot that we proposed. If they want to, so if they don't want to subdivide, they go under the family estate, and if they want to subdivide, they could go under the rural lot provisions. And then it maintains that agricultural area. So just additional food for thought. But I think we so what he's proposing is to allow a 1 acre subdivided lot, and make sure I'm capturing this correctly, a 1 acre subdivided lot in RP10 for a family
Family
estate
estate.
with an overall density of 1 unit for 5 acres. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And in family estates, right there, number 1, would you say, you know, that it could be additional family dwelling units, or it could be a subdivision by the person or the person's in control of the property. So,
But
you know, you do have an option under family estates.
at least you said it can't get a building permit anyhow, right?
That's a court-ordered subdivision that doesn't have any infrastructure, you know, and.
That's
Oh,
easy.
okay.
Okay.
Remember the Coleman?
Any other
Between
feedback
you
on
and
that one,
Coleman.
on the family estates?
They would want to add a second double wide.
I guess,
They could, 'cause they could. They couldn't do the second.
Yeah, yeah. Is that, Mr. Chairman, is that the consensus of the commission?
Yes.
They wouldn't be able to.
Or the,
I think the parcels on 5 acres.
that's consensus.
Yes.
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 What Mr. Robinson proposed.
Yeah.
Well, what you just said. I'm not really sure.
1 acre lot with overall density of 5 units per acre for family estate.
Right.
Okay. And then I think that the last part was if you support the Article 22, the rural small lot subdivision standards.
What were you saying about the repairing the buffer, changing from 2,000 to 1,000?
So that's in the overlay district for manufactured systems. Previously, we had 2,000 feet and are recommending a modification to 1,000 feet as opposed to
I
2,000.
understand. Why do you?
I think from a practicability standpoint, if that's the right word to use, I'll at least.
So we still have some people who's not even happy with the 1,000 feet, and to be honest with you, in all transparency, we've invited, I'm trying to set up a meeting now for the director of South Carolina Department of Environmental Services, the director of on-site wastewater, to come in and meet with us, and the council staff, and primarily staff, and talk to us because they think that it's an issue. So, and they have went and talked to Orangeburg, so I don't have a date set for that, but we're working towards that. But in the meantime, 2,000 feet's almost a half a mile, and that's gonna create more hardships than we're gonna be able to handle, you know, because if you can't meet it, you can apply for a variance, but you do have to show a hardship. So, we've reduced it to
You have people now that are
1,000.
not satisfied with the 1,000.
The 1,000 stuff, I mean, that's tough. That's 210. It's almost 3 miles.
But we want to hear from the experts
Okay.
on that.
I
So
just asked.
so for now, we've put it at 1,000, and
Okay.
then we're waiting to meet with the experts on that particular regulation.
So anything else on the, I guess, either the rural small lot or the, anything else that we've?
Approve the changes with our.
Any questions, comments? Been what she asking? Hear none?
Lisa, what you asking for today, boss?
So, before county council, prepare for second reading, they're gonna have a workshop to make sure they work out all the, and you say you are gonna recommend that we do that workshop jointly.
That you're invited to that. We haven't established a date. There's an email going around now trying to, you know, figure out when that date, when can the council be present, and so we're waiting to hear from them.
Okay.
So, from the commissioners, any other questions coming from Ms. Wagner, Ms. Denise?
None for me.
Oh, I just, Lisa, how far, if you're building a house, how, is there a recommendation how far a septic tank or water pump has to be from the house when you're building it? Is there?
We follow the South Carolina Department of Environmental Services.
But you know what the standards are?
So what we had is
Somebody asked me.
setbacks from the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have wetlands, then if it's a conventional system in the U-Haul overlay district, the proposal was 200 feet from the wetlands. But I think it's a 75-foot setback for the well from the septic tank.
75?
And that's what used to be called DHEC. They're
Okay.
calling themselves Department of Environmental Services now. So I think, you know, that's what they require. And then your tank itself has to be 5 feet away from your house.
5 feet? Because somebody asked me yesterday and I did not know. But, okay, I promise I would get the answers. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is there no interest in considering reducing the RP10 to 5 acres for,
I'm real hard pressed on that one.
I mean, I'm among us, I mean, I won't beat that horse, but I really think it's important to reduce that required lot size from 10 acres to 5 acres.
I think that would be more accommodating because the roof conservation is 2 acres and RP10, 5, that's still a very low density.
Well, it makes sense for me just because the agricultural status is a 5 acre minimum. So it kind of goes hand in hand with that.
We could make that recommendation to the county council for them to consider. That doesn't mean it's going to be changed, but we could
It'll be changed.
suggest that that is,
They went extreme. They went extreme on purpose.
The huge parcels of land, when you talk about the people who have the small parcels, I think it's a good way to move it.
yeah, I would like to offer that as a suggestion to the rest of the commissioners if they consider that to be reasonable for the
Yeah,
county.
She put that in her note as, you have that in your notes.
Well, I think having
Yeah, are you all in agreement with that, or
Yes.
as far as a recommendation?
Yes.
I am. I can't speak for everybody, but I certainly am.
Well, all in favor of that such recommendation, let it know by show of hands. Yeah.
We'll forward a recommendation to the county council.
So, Ms. Wagner,
Yes, sir.
any motion on any of the recommendations we need from the commissioners for the adjourn this workshop?
I don't have anything else for this,
Yeah,
for the workshop itself.
okay. Only thing that's left on there, any discussion on, okay.
I have something that came up yesterday. You know, I worked the polls yesterday, so I had an opportunity to talk to a lot of people down in Levy. And it brought home again the real concern I have regarding the annexation by particularly the city of Hardyville of lands in the middle of Jasper County rural property. And in point, I recently attended a workshop, a presentation for the development of Exit 3, and those people own property all the way from Highway 17 all the way back through Puresburg to 321, which has now been annexed into the city of Hardyville. And they presented the information presented is a huge development. They're going to start with Exit 3 and coming back toward down Puresburg Road, down toward the cemeteries, for those of you who are familiar. They have proposed a tremendous community to be developed off Puresburg Road that will go back to 321, down to Church Road. There is a preserve for an endangered species of salamander that's going to be included there on Church Road and Honey Hill. And then it'll jump over to Honey Hill, and they're going to put 2 more subdivisions on Honey Hill Road. Tremendous amount of people in a very rural area, and it will significantly impact county residents with no input, because our county does not work with the city of Hardyville. The people, what happened to the people in Levy that are county residents is awful. And if you haven't been down there, you should take a trip down to Levy and see what these county residents have in their backyard. Warehouses is unbelievable. And we have to work with the city of Hardyville for the residents of Puresburg and Levy. The citizens in Levy, I talked to a lady yesterday, they are organizing and to try and get some relief from this. And it's a shame that the leaders in the county don't take a more active role in working for the people, residents. And we need to work as a group with the planning department in Hardyville. Our people should not have been caught off guard one morning when these huge machines came in and clear-cut what had been forested area for generations. So I know I sound a little passionate about it, and I am, because I don't think we're meeting the needs of the residents in Jasper County. And the one way to go about it is to work cooperatively with the county, with the
So
cities.
when we do rezonings and we identify, say, 500 feet, whatever it is, our minimum in our ordinance is 500 feet. State law says you only have to notify the person adjacent to you. I send out notices. I don't put on the town limits to see were they in the town, so we won't notify them. So just to that comment, you know, when they're annexing, when you annex, it doesn't have to go through a public hearing, and you have your zoning assigned to you. So shame on Hardyville for not notifying
I don't disagree with
their
that.
citizens.
I don't, but you know,
or our citizens.
we can't get a free pass. I mean, just because Hardyville didn't do the right thing and let those
Yeah.
people down, those aren't voters to them. They don't vote in the
Yeah.
in the city. They vote for the county, and so we have to try and network and bridge those weaknesses in working together. We have to be the bigger person here to try and meet the
We've
needs of the
tried.
people.
So as soon as
Well, we
y'all can
can't
figure
quit.
out a solution, we'll be very
Well-
happy to try and implement it.
Well, I do. I think we should meet with their planning commission as a start. Just have a joint meeting to talk about this.
They've
I'm
been
not
here,
ex-
Dr. Bostick's aware, and Mr. Pinckney, they agreed to have quarterly meetings.
that's-
But once they kind of get the county to bow down to them, they no longer communicate with us.
Well,
They
I-
didn't show up for any of those meetings.
I just don't think we can say that's okay. I mean, we just
No.
have to keep trying. And the leadership of the county needs to be, the county council is the one that should be leading this. I mean,
Yes.
really, they are the leaders in the county.
I agree.
But there are a lot of people that live in Puresburg that are going to be blindsided by this. I was told that the original PDD for that property done back maybe in the 2000s allowed for as many as 6,000 homes out there. And they promised they aren't going to put that many out there. And I suppose that's because there's so much wetlands out there. It's a terrible thing for our county, and this unrestricted growth without input from the people who've lived here for generations is terrible. And I think as a planning commission, a recommending body, we should step forward and try and show leadership in this area. Anyway, that's my open discussion.
Mr. Chairman, my open discussion is, when I first came upon the planning commission, the chairman of the county council established a 5-mile radius. And every month we would meet within that 5 miles. And I think that would be a good, Lisa, you remember that.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good thing. I don't know the county laws, I don't know state laws. Maybe county council can enforce that, a 5-mile radius. Maybe they can pass something in county council and that would compel them. But we have been trying to meet with these people in Hardyville now. They
Yeah, we
rejected
have.
us. I mean, Lisa made an effort, Mr. Chairman and all of us. But a couple of months ago, I sat on this commission and I begged people to go down there to Levy and see what was going on.
Well,
It
I've
is
been
horrible.
there. It is
Oh,
sad.
you did go? Yeah.
Oh, I've
I
been
sit
there a
couple
year
of months
ago.
ago
It's
and
very
I asked
sad.
people to please take a trip down there to Levy. It looked like a movie out of, you need to go see it for yourself. But I'm glad you went. And,
Well,
yeah.
they've got another 1,400 acres that
More than
hasn't
that?
been clear
Well,
cut yet,
yeah,
I understand.
I tried.
It's a
couple
former
months-
plantation, I was
it
told
is.
yesterday.
I think it's like 300, a 300 square foot building, 300,000 square, yeah, 300,000 square foot building. It's supposed to be coming up to 1 million square feet. when you
Yeah.
finish.
Can you imagine living there with the number of those big trucks that will be coming in constantly, day and night? It's terrible for our county.
Maybe we can enforce a 5-mile radius with county council.
Well, that was under an intergovernmental agreement,
Right,
so.
right. I know you remember. But I'm glad y'all went and saw it, because I came through there and I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it.
It's sad.
It is, it is.
Any other discussion? So I'm ready to entertain.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We stand adjourned. I think she has to refresh me. We now open the day for public comment. This is a planning commission workshop.
Taxpayers ain't got no say.
No, it will be a public hearing through county council. Planning commission,
Who's paying you?
We don't get paid.
There will be a public
volunteers.
hearing for all,
It's done through
taxpayers
county
or
council.
citizens before the county council.
He can speak at our meetings.
Bring it to a referendum vote for the people that's gonna affect. Because I know all y'all good people, I don't need 6 people telling you how I'm gonna live and what I'm gonna do. My people's been here over 200 years. Put it on a referendum, send letters out to the people that's going to concern, and let's vote on it. Put everything back where the county ain't got no say about me and my property. That's the way
yeah.